We're just getting rolling. I am using a newly updated Zoom platform. Thank you for your patience. I'm promoting my intrepid co-host for these Family Forum evenings, Holly Bell. Welcome, Holly.
Hello, thank you.
Oh, there you are. Good, look at us. We're operational, folks. Here we are.
It's a big day.
It's a big day. It's a big day. Hello, Holly. Good to see
Hi,
you.
Sam. Good to see you.
Thank you.
I heard that you snuck down to the cities a little bit ago.
I did, and in fact, I will be chaperoning tomorrow's 7th and 8th year in person.
Oh, fun.
Physically distanced gathering at Como Park
That's good.
tomorrow midday, and so I'll be down again, and that'll
Yay.
be wonderful. Yeah. And then I know we got some questions.
We did.
These hours, and another one in last week's family survey that I don't think I typed in yet about what about the meetups for all the other ages? And so I'll speak. The short answer is, if it's an academic meetup, I've said this before, yes, we're working on that. And if it's social meetups that you want, please, please, please use the family directory, which we publish and send out. And if you don't have it, let us know and we'll send it to you again. The reason we don't post that on the internet is because we don't want folks to call you up and try and sell you stuff because of our website. And then use the maps of where people live to either organize within your neighborhood or your classroom community. Please organize social gatherings to your own liking. And then I know that we have some folks in the parent engagement group who are putting out materials on how to do that safely, securely, and also with peace of mind for things like liability. And, if I organize a meetup at my local park and someone slips on the ice, am I responsible? Some people think about that kind of stuff. So we've put together some guidance and we'll be sure to put that in the newsletter this Thursday. So, and then we'll just do this thing again, Holly, where I know Charlie listens to these videos. We'll say, hi, Charlie.
Hi, Charlie. I miss you. Hi, Charlie.
All right, so good. And to all of you who might be new here watching live, down at the bottom is a Q&A, and you can use that little Q&A box to type in questions, and we will answer those questions. Secondly, if you have something to tell us that's just complimentary or quizzical, that's not a Q&A, you can put that in the chat. But the Q&A is where we'll answer all the questions. And then we have gathered up some questions that just shortly here when I can get this, it's like I'm pulling the rope on the lawnmower to try to get the screen share to work.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We'll see. That's okay. That's okay. So I like using stuff that asks a little bit of us.
Yes, a question did come in from Q&A already.
Oh, good. Oh, good. So we'll open up with going over the talking points. There we go. Now my screen share is definitely going to work. We're going to look at some of the talking points, and then I have some Q&A questions already typed into a presentation for the night.
I guess those would just be cues.
Yes. Well, and I've got some answers in there,
okay,
but not typed out. Some of them are in here. So
okay. That's some cues.
Yeah. Some cues. And then Holly, I'll chat in just in case something goes awry.
Yes.
I don't think it will, but just as a backup, folks, you should always know plan B is good to have ready. And tonight's plan B is if my bandwidth and Wi-Fi crumbles and I get lost for a few minutes, Holly has the presentation that she can screen share if need be. Yes. In any case, without further ado, I've got some talking points data to show that shows viral activity in our 7 metro counties.
Good.
Holly, can you see? There we are.
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. And I'm going to do something that will pause it for a moment. I want to make sure you can still see it. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Oh, good. And when I scroll, do you see it too? I'll make it just a little bigger. All right.
No scrolling.
Okay. Can you see the case rates per 10,000 and the positive tests by county?
I can, but I'm wearing my glasses.
Oh, good, good, good. Well, I'll make it a little bit bigger, and hopefully we'll see how that goes. Um, okay, so folks, just starting out with our talking points. Oh, but I knew it. Got to pull that. I got to pull that cord one more time. There we go. That should work.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So we're showing the 7 metro county areas, and this is again just one of the data points. I'll talk about this in a couple minutes with our new baselines and our new protocols for making sure that we're staying up to date on data. But what we're looking at here are case rates per 10,000 that in particular in Ramsey County and Hennepin County are down below 20 for the first time in quite some time. And that is good news. Knowing what we know about this report and also knowing the epidemiologists who give really good advice to the Department of Health, the epidemiologists in Minnesota who give national and international advice, we know to expect that these low case rates right now were considered quite high last July. And in comparison to where we were as a society, say, back in December, yes, they're much lower. And again, what we want to see is these down in the mid-teens or below 10 to really give a signal that the pandemic has lost momentum. Last, we do have our eyes on and have plans to in place to monitor how a variant or a change in the qualitative aspects of the virus affect how we operate. And so just a heads up on that. Also, though, this would be one of the places to indicate why and how we're looking at communicating a little bit differently about the adolescent school resource center so that students, if they need to be on site, we want to welcome them on site in a way that really supports their learning. And then again, going at percent of tests positive by county, you can see here that by counties, test rate positivity is still above 5%. We'd like to see it below 5% ideally, and we definitely want to see it below 10%. And so that's just one of the places that we're checking in on data. The other place, though, that I want to point out that we check in on data regularly would be, oh, I'm just going to go to the, here we go. Right here, which we shared last week, these baselines for pausing. So lower elementary starts in-person learning on Monday, March 8th. I'll answer some questions in just a moment about that. Upper elementary students are welcome to come back on April 12th. And we're working right now fervently, if not feverishly. We decided to stop saying feverishly. We're working fervently right now on a survey for students, for staff and faculty, and for caregivers to hear from you as adolescents, adolescent students, adolescent staff and faculty, adolescent caregivers about your experiences, your thoughts right now on learning models, and your suggestions and solutions for how we approach the situation where, again, we have a fairly polarized set of opinions about in-person versus continued virtual or distance learning. And so we will be sending that out by the end of this week. And our advisory group that works on COVID operations is a group of volunteer community members, our school nurse, some other medical experts, parents, students, and staff who are looking at those things. And we're preparing that survey to go out to the adolescent community again by the end of this week. So I just wanted to go over, though, when we're going back in person, we are using these baselines for all of our in-person scenarios. And when I look at those case rate numbers per 10,000 and positivity rates, this regional community spread column here, Holly, is that big enough to see?
It is.
Okay, good. Well, then I'll just stick with it. That regional community spread column is important because specifically what we have here is that if cases per 10,000 were to rise above 75, and so that could be in the 2-week average. We are also, though, partnering with a couple other schools who do every 3 days, they look at local rates. And if we had any indication that case rates per 10,000 were above 10, or case rates per 10,000 were above 75, excuse me, we would do an immediate assessment as to whether or not we need to pause in-person learning. And or if we saw a positivity rate above 10%. And what we've said here are averaging the 7 metro counties. So we wouldn't want to see those case rate averages or positivity rate averages go above those numbers. And we're using those as a baseline, meaning If all their metrics were the same, everything was operating well, it would still be a flag that we have to assess the ability to continue in person if either of these things happen. So we would conduct an assessment by calling our Department of Education Regional Health Team, which is a Ramsey County group that actually works with metro area schools all over the 7 metro counties. And then we would also conduct an advisory group meeting. We'd talk with our school nurse, who works with, through their agency, Navigate Consulting, many other charter schools, and we would determine if a pause is necessary. So regardless of any other data, if a variant or other viral spread were to cause those case rates to go up, that would cause a flag. Also, though, in this first column, we're also keeping our eye on if a Department of Health, and our Department of Health follows closely CDC recommendations. So if the CDC or our Department of Health raised a concern about health in schools changing, or the picture of security in schools changing because of these variants, that's the official word that we'd look for in order to, again, assess whether or not a pause is necessary. So I thought that was important enough to open up with, though, Holly. And
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you.
yeah, why don't we warm up with the Q&A that's in the Q&A, and
Okay.
then what I can do, get ready to share the rest of this presentation.
Okay. There is Dave Miko's commenting machine says,
okay, good.
Anyway, the bike trip could happen this year for 7th and 8th graders.
That is a great question. And at this point, I will say we are planning experiences, but a few things about the bike trip currently. I have not consulted the guides who plan the trip. I haven't consulted recently the program director, Tammy Lindbergh, but I will say confidently that the things that I know we don't have solutions right now for that are feasible include tenting. The number of those tents, if we had to individualize them right now for a trip, would not function. And the literal proximity of that group of students when they are biking, camping together, cooking together. At this point, even though schools have the green light to go with 3-foot distancing and other mitigation measures, we don't have a current plan as to how to apply those mitigation measures to a bike trip this spring. And I do know there's work being done on what experiences could be engaged with this spring, and also forward planning into next year as to how to do the bike trip again, including something important that you may not think of at home, but Montessori education really builds on multi-year experiences. So it's really counting on your younger students learning from older students, and then that next year, your older students being ready to teach younger students. So we are entering a spring in which our current 7th year students have not been on a bike trip, and our current 8th year students, it was a long time since their last bike trip. And in fact, they might not have been on a bike trip either. So we got to retrain a whole group. So we're preparing for that. If it's possible this spring to do it, we will. But I can't say that it is. And I know that there's some serious barriers, which is why some other folks are working on plans B and B1, 2, 3, which include outdoor experiences, small groups of students together that are more manageable, and meaningful work that may not involve overnights, tents, camping, sleeping, cooking together, that kind of thing. Thank you, though, Dave. Really good question. And Holly, can you see the family forum?
Yes, it's orange.
Excellent. Wonderful. So I'm just going to move forward here through the slideshow because we got a lot of questions that were gathered up. Holly, how about this? I'll warm up. I played baseball when I was younger. I'll warm up my swing. You just set them up and I will swing. I'll swing at them.
I've been known to strike people out.
Here we go.
Giving you warning.
You might throw a change up in there without me even knowing.
Okay, ready?
I'm ready. Here we go.
Why are there no conferences for elementary students?
Excellent question. I'm so glad you asked. Our guides got together, looked at how often they've been conferencing with students individually, looked at how often they've been connecting with family members and guardians and caregivers of students who may need more family connection or inform. And with the amount of time and energy going into preparing for learning especially for the lower L on March 8th, but also for the upper L. Our guides wanted to make sure that these weeks in March weren't broken up artificially into tiny segments, that we got into a rhythm, that we really engaged in the work, and then we proceeded that way. So if you're an elementary family and you really want to make sure you get some connection with the guide that you were expecting at conferences, please let us know. You can let us know at office or you can talk to your guide about that. But on the whole, we made the educational decision that it was really important to keep a good rhythm once we established it, rather than start a rhythm, break it up with conference week, and then have a rhythm and then break it up for spring break week. So adolescent folks still do have conferences that week in March. And again, if you're an elementary family who believes you need it, then please let us know. Please let us know. Okay, Holly, here we go. Number 2.
Ready? Number 2.
Just kidding. I'm going left-handed this time. Here we go.
Okay, I'll do 2.
Yeah.
What are the school hours for lower elementary students coming back on site on Monday, March 8th?
Thank you for asking, Holly. Very specifically, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Okay.
If you're an in-person learner starting for lower elementary next week, your drop-off window is 8:30 to 8:55 a.m. So
That's
be out of the car and approaching the school by 8:53 so that you can be ready in your classroom at 9 a.m. sharp. We don't want to be pulling up at 8:56. So 8:30 to 8:55, you can drop off. And if you're picking a student up, then starts at 3:05 after the buses have departed, and then hopefully goes, very succinctly after that. So plan on 3:05 for an arrival. I know we're right now practicing setting out markers for and envisioning how to make that experience the smoothest, both for dropping students off and picking students up. As a reminder, our students will be using mostly the individual classroom doors in their classrooms to come in and out of the school. And this actually sets me up for the next question. Holly.
Sam, is busing available for lower elementary students?
Busing is available for lower elementary students. And the way that we know you need to be part of the busing plan is that you put that in the RSVP that you made. So if you did not put that in your survey and you're wondering or waiting to get information, please send us a message at office@greatriverschool.org or call us up and talk to us about it. We do, though, have bus routes that are accommodating right now all of the students who said that they needed a bus. And that also means, just for anyone who's curious, that we are having households. So if you're a sibling in the same household, you're sitting in the same seat on the bus to allow us to space students out sufficiently. And what we are doing is making sure that students are not only across the aisle from each other in different households, but staggered. So basically, every other seat and every other row, all the way down the bus. So a typical bus that holds, 13 rows of students with students on both sides, right now would actually just hold 13 households with 6 on one side and 7 households on the other side. And that's how we've planned our busing routes. So that all begins on Monday the 8th. We have some updated times we'll be sharing with families no later than Thursday for those routes. All right, number 3, here we go.
No, this is number 4.
Number four. Yeah.
When?
Oh, I'm bunting. I'm gonna bunt.
Okay. I have to throw a curveball.
Okay, it's okay.
When will the lower adolescent students be able to return to campus?
And I'm bunting on this one specifically because we are working on that plan right now. And I know the folks who are asking this question, you may have an answer in your mind, whether it's right now, or maybe you've added some colorful adjectives to that right now, or perhaps you're thinking it shouldn't be right now. And perhaps you even have some colorful adjectives for why it shouldn't be right now. That would be describing the poles of this situation. I know there's lots of families in between and students in between. So as I said, we'll be sending on an adolescent survey this week. We're going to take that information in. We're going to use that information to inform what we see our community needs. We're going to come up with some proposals, having both taken information from students and staff and caregivers. We're going to bring those proposals first to our staff internally to get some feedback on what's possible and what's likely, and then we'll be showing those proposals and ideas back to the community and likely having a second round of either RSVPing or feedback so that we can understand what you need. So All of that feedback from this survey we send out this week will be asked for within a 4-day period. So if we send it Friday, we'd like it filled out by Monday at 10 p.m. So we're probably going to send you lots of reminders. And then we're going to be using that feedback really next week to process into information. And we don't want to be lagging. I also want to identify that we have indicators, not for all students by any means, but for many students, the current investment of adults and of time and of supports for the current distance learning regimen is working for enough students that we want to make sure we don't disrupt that in the name of trying to invent a new system that'll accommodate some people coming on campus and some not. We will, regardless of that survey result, though, be offering more and more opportunities to be coming onto campus as adolescent students through the spring to receive either direct time in social groups, to do lessons or class gatherings, either on site or at a local outdoor spot, and or to be inside after we again take that feedback and surveys. I know some guides would really like to be on campus meeting with and instructing students. And I know some students really like to be on campus. So I do know that through the spring, especially after spring break, there'll be more and more of those opportunities. Number 5, here we go.
Number 5.
Yep. Get the elbow up. That was one of the things, the classic sort of baseball coaching. You gotta get the elbow up.
Ball for you.
Okay. Whoa.
What is the process when there is a confirmed COVID-19 case in the school?
I am so glad you asked. And in fact, oh, here we go. You see that I use, are you seeing the return website loading right now, Holly?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful. Okay, tell me when you see the new speedometers.
I see the speedometers.
Excellent. You will notice, folks, we have become a much more advanced mechanism here at Great River School. We have 2 speedometers. We have different speeds depending on our programs, in fact. And so you'll notice that our elementary is working toward a hybrid model, meaning some students are electing to be at home, virtual learning. Some students are electing to be on campus. And so that's in the realm of doing the hybrid, which means that our teachers and our classroom assistants are all planning this week to meet needs that way. And on the right side, you'll see our adolescent students are in distance learning with School Resource Center being offered. So that's one notch up from a restricted SRC, meaning you may contact us if you would like your adolescent student to be coming on for the SRC. We do have additional staff we've hired in the past few weeks, and we are looking forward to having your adolescent student come if you need this to make your distance learning experience successful. So as I scroll down, though, there's been some updates to this website, Holly, and I'm going to get down to what happens when there is a confirmed COVID-19 case. But notice we've published here our baselines that I talked about earlier today, as well as the safety protocols. Yes. We also have linked here a daily health check form that anyone coming onto campus should use. If I highlight it, can you see that, Holly?
I can see it, yes.
The highlight, great.
Daily health check form. And is that for just students?
That's for students and adults who are coming onto campus. Anyone coming onto campus, you can go to the website and you can see the same form we've been using all year. We just wanted to make it really easy to find. I'll talk about some more updates in a minute, but as I scroll down here, this is what happens when a positive COVID case is reported.
Let's look at
Can
that.
you see the graphic, Holly? Is it good?
It's so impressive.
Excellent. Okay, good. So immediately, we inform the families of all students who would have had any close contact with a positive case. And that confirmed COVID-19 case in the school means that we know that student's schedule, where that student is in space, and particularly because of how the protocols work on campus now, students are not going between classrooms, they're not going down the hall. There's a much more restricted movement outside of the classroom. In the classroom, students are going to practice keeping their 3-foot distances. They'll still move around and access materials, though it will be different than before the pandemic. So I just want to make that clear. But families of students affected would receive an email immediately with as much information as possible. And then we will do contact tracing. And immediately we also identify that anyone who was or is a close contact would be guided to follow the Department of Health decision tree. Thank you. I was going to call it a tracing tree, Holly, but it's a decision tree, meaning I had a close contact, I will quarantine, and that quarantine still right now is for 14 days. Also, we let everyone who works at the school immediately know, and we are working and living through a pandemic right now. So we would expect to be ready to use this system. If all things go perfectly, I expect that we use the system perfectly and nobody actually passes a COVID case to another person. If all things go exceptionally well, unexpectedly, we won't have any positive cases, but that's not what we expect. We do expect that there's community exposure. Someone may be on campus with a positive case, which is why we have this system ready. So we let all people who work at the school know immediately what's happening. And then weekly, we report on numbers, and we'll continue to do that just as we have been doing it. This is how our communication flow works and our contact tracing flow works. The yellow shows the contact tracing here. The green shows communication between us and the community. And usually when we communicate with affected families and faculty, we find out maybe new things, like families will say, oh, and by the way, we actually had a birthday party and we hung out with all these people and it started to rain and we were all in the basement together. We should let them know too, right? And so that kind of information exchange is really important to successful contact tracing. And then just to let folks know that this is still the same, that a positive COVID test means that the people who were around that person quarantine, but their family members at home do not quarantine. Meaning, if Holly and I live in the same household, I was closely exposed at school and I'm on 14-day quarantine. Unless I show symptoms, Holly doesn't have to stay home from school or work. It can be confusing to think of it that way, and we're following the Department of Health guidance. So we do inform everybody immediately who is involved, and then weekly the whole community. I also want to just scroll up here though to an important note. Holly,
Yes,
if I highlight this right here, we encourage every family and student to get tested regularly. Do you see that?
I do.
We have linked on our website at the /return page where you can order free tests to be delivered to your house. You then log into a website, you follow medical professionals' orders to fill a little vial with saliva, you cap it off, you put it in a container, you send it back with UPS, and you get the results within 48 hours.
I've
it's
done
miraculous.
that twice. It's really easy.
And it's free.
Yes.
Also, though, there are many, many sites near you. And the state of Minnesota is asking all students and families participating in extracurriculars, in club sports, in anything in your neighborhood, in any school, to make it a habit to get tested. And so we're putting that message out now too. We sent that message to all Lower L families today. Even if you're not coming on site, make it a habit to get tested. And as long as the state and, in my mind, our society is investing in making this resource available, this is one of the things that last summer could have allowed us to make, I think, a more informed decision about how to present school this year. And so the more folks in our community who regularly get tested by participating in Minnesota's free testing resources, the more we can put together informed information about if the virus is prevalent in our community. So we can't require, and so we don't want to oblige any person, any employee or any family member to share medical information with us, but we can request that if you're open to it, let us know if you test negative, let us know if you test positive, and then we'll have more information about how conservative or how proactive we can be about moving to more in-person models. Holly, question.
When you say regularly,
Yeah.
testing regularly, is that every 2 weeks, every 3
Oh,
weeks?
sure. So the state of Minnesota right now and the Department of Health are advising schools to encourage families to do it weekly and encouraging teachers to do testing on their school site, which we do, but then also on the off weeks to use these resources for free tests.
Nice.
So that would give us a picture. If there is anyone who is asymptomatic, we can proactively quarantine, check people for symptoms, even encourage quarantine people to get tests, and then we can follow the Department of Health guidelines. Because if you are quarantined, you get a test 5 to 7 days after. There's a little more leeway that I think will be coming in guidance soon about schools operating. So that's a big answer, but when someone is positive, we've got a whole system, and I wanted to fold in there all the different layers. And let's get tested more, everybody. Let's do this. Right?
Every week,
Well, just make it part of a habit. If it's on a drive and there's an easy spot to get tested, great. I go on to the internet on a little device like this, order a test that gets sent to my house. If that works for you, great. And if it doesn't work for you or you need support in how to figure that out, there are phone numbers to call through the Department of Health. And if you got any questions about what the school is asking of you, please let us know. All right, here we go. Number six.
Oh, can you go back to the questions?
Oh, yes, I will. Sorry, Holly.
That's okay.
Oh, here we go.
Number 6.
Yeah.
Please
Yes.
repeat the guidelines for returning to school in person after traveling. Are there any restrictions for returning after spring break?
Indeed, there are. And so to be very specific, the governor's orders from back in November 2020 still stand. And they are as follows. 1, travel is not recommended. So basically, the first is, if you can help it, don't travel, especially out of state. What we included in guidance given last week, and we'll reiterate this week, sending it to Lower L families on Thursday, is that if you travel out of state or you attend a wedding locally, or you go to a water park locally, or you have another weekend, we tried to use all W's, another weekend event where there's a large crowd and perhaps unexpectedly you were either in proximity to or indoors with a lot of people, we're asking that you would then proceed with caution and act as if you've traveled. And specifically, what we would like you to do then is quarantine and follow the Department of Health guidance to quarantine. You have 2 options though, after that kind of event of traveling, water parking, wedding attending, that kind of thing. After you have a possible exposure, act as if you've been exposed. And the quarantine path can either be a quarantine for at least 7 days after exposure, where you get tested 5 or 6 days after exposure, get a negative result, let us know, and then we can proceed. Or you don't get tested and you quarantine for the full 14 days. And so yes, if you travel out of state, we want you to follow those recommendations. The departments of health in some other states have been giving different guidance to folks who are vaccinated. And so I'll just say this, internally, we're communicating with staff about that situation for them, but we know that there is no vaccination approved right now for children. And so if any student travels, follow the quarantine guidelines. It's at least 7 days, and then you have to have a negative test taken 5 days after exposure, and or it's 14 days with no negative test.
Okay. Thank
Okay. Woo! Woo!
I
Okay.
know. There's more.
And then we got a couple more questions this week. Ready? For 7 and 8.
Right.
6, 7, 8. Another 6, 7, 8.
Right. Oh dear.
We'll make these ones fast.
Okay. Has the student wellness and equity coordinator been hired yet?
No, they haven't, though the application window has closed. So we have many applicants. We also have a hiring committee that is made up of staff and some parents. And that committee will be reviewing applications this week and setting up interviews very soon. I think they're meeting tomorrow, the group is, to look at applications, and then they'll be going over those things. Again, this is a student-facing position, and we are interviewing some folks who work at other schools, I think. I anticipate we're interviewing some folks who could start sooner. And so when the appropriate candidate has been selected by that committee of folks, we will then engage with a start date, and I look forward to that happening. Also, I guess one note is that we have prioritized the participation of Black, Indigenous, and people of color on that hiring committee because that wellness and equity coordinator engages so overtly with the BIPOC student community on campus. Next question.
Next question.
Yes.
When will we find out if our student's guide will be returning in person or not for lower elementary on Monday?
Right. Well, so you may not have noticed this, lower L families or upper L families, but we actually put in your letter a lot of details sent on February 19th about your classroom. And any classroom that has a guide who is requesting accommodations to not return to in-person learning, that was in that letter on February 19th. So if in that letter on February 19th, it was, now if you're just searching through your inbox right now, it was sent by communications@greatriverschool.org. And so again, communications@greatriverschool.org would be the sender of that email on February 19th. You will find at the top a bullet point with the please fill out the survey. And that first sentence right after the bullet point says what's going on with the people in your classroom. And so if your classroom guide is listed there, that means we expect them to be there. Some guides wanted to communicate overtly the full picture of what they need to return in person. And if a guide had an accommodation, that was listed there too. So you already know, you might have just thought we didn't tell you. So at this point, we really went out of our way to tell everybody individually what's going on. And also at the end of this week, you will learn for a classroom by classroom picture how many students are in person and how many students are virtual learning for your lower L classroom. And toward the end of this month, we'll do a similar thing for upper L classrooms.
Nice.
Okay, here we go. Last one, I think.
No, it's not, because we have one in the Q&A.
Oh, true.
Here
Okay.
comes. Ready?
Oh, I'm ready. Yep.
Do you have enough 11th grade parents to help with graduation?
Well, we have 3 that have volunteered for the lead role. And so the short answer is, I believe we have the lead roles filled, as long as these 3 stick with it. I'll let you know if that changes. Secondly, though, we're going to need at least a dozen more as we get toward the graduation date to fill roles like person who goes and gets the flowers from the flower place, person who picks up the things from the thing place, person who shows up with the stuff for the show up of the stuff spot, all that stuff. So those are very important roles I just described, and they come with full job descriptions. And so we will need at least a dozen more. And so if you're interested in doing that, both we will ask again later. But if you know right now you want a job, just give me a job and I'll do it on graduation day. You can let us know and we'll keep your name for those folks. But we'll be meeting, I believe, early next week. I'm just literally now sending that invite to those 3 brave, intrepid souls who volunteered to be lead volunteer organizers for graduation.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a question and answer box question.
Oh, from the Q&A, yeah.
Yes. My husband has 2 doses of the vaccine.
Yes, hopefully that's a 2-dose vaccine, which I think it is.
2 doses. He has 2 doses. Yes. Should he still get tested every 2 weeks?
Well, so I'm answering this question as a school administrator who knows, I think this person must be an educator, but maybe they're not. But I'm thinking likely they might work in a school. You should still participate in testing even if you've been vaccinated, because we don't have enough data nationally, or my understanding is globally, to know if as a vaccinated person you absolutely cannot spread the virus. And so if testing is available to you, yes, you should get tested. Also, if you're at home and you're wanting to follow through on this request I just made of families, then yeah, I think take advantage of those free tests. The understanding that we have at the direction of the Department of Health is that if you're a vaccinated person, you still wear masks, you still engage in social distancing, you still wash your hands, you still pay attention. If you've been a close exposure, the guidance from the Department of Health for both educators and medical workers is that you would still quarantine unless you're 14 days after your second dose of a 2-dose vaccine, and it hasn't been 90 days since your vaccine. So there's like a 2.5-month window at which the Department of Health says, even if you've been a close exposure, you keep going to work. But I do know that they recommend that those folks still get tests to see if indeed they're just asymptomatic carriers now, because a vaccine means that you don't test positive unless, of course, you actually have the virus. That's what we've been told, and that's in all our protocols. I'm not a public health expert. I am just reading, hearing, and noting a lot of things. And so I'm learning how to repeat the guidance from the Department of Health, which you can find on their website. Okay, Holly, there's a few questions actually from last week that we didn't follow up on. One was, how many lower L students are coming back? And so I just want to show a picture really clearly here that we have 100% response rate from lower L families right now. I think we have
what a bunch of good people.
I know. And we have about 65% response rate, I believe, from upper L right now. So if you're an upper L family, and you know what you want to do, then please fill out that RSVP survey. We'll send out a reminder again soon. But with 100% respondents, we have 68.7% of our elementary students in lower L planning to be in person on March 8th, and 31% planning to be virtual. In a typical classroom, this would mean roughly 22 to 24 students would be in person, and roughly somewhere between 9 and 11 students would be virtual learners. It is fairly consistent across classrooms, I will say. Actually, I don't think there's a spread of more than 2 students difference between classrooms. And so that's actually a much more consistent result than was shown in our earlier surveys, and a few more people coming in person than we expected. And as we said last week, we're totally prepared for the distancing. We are working this whole week on protocol training, safety trainings, and classroom setups. And we're really looking forward to having a secure learning experience with just some changes. And so a reminder, these things are now on our website. So we have baselines for when we would pause in-person learning clearly set. If any of these things happen before March 8th, we would pause, assess, and communicate out to the community if we change in course. We also have some protocols that we're using to maintain baselines. And so I wanted to identify here that these are published now. Our COVID advisory group has seen these and endorsed them. At least, excuse me, the benchmarks arm of that group. The rest of the group will be asked by email this week to give any other feedback. Our school board has been shown these, and while we are working with our school nurse and the Department of Health through developing guidelines, we're confident right now that these are really reliable methods. Whew, okay. Portion 2 of what we talked about last week, but didn't get, I think, enough time to really attend to this, is some questions that came in through an anonymous, we have, if you didn't know, on our website, an anonymous venue where we can take your feedback in. And we've had a few questions that came in through the Contact Us anonymous venue that asked these particular questions. What's the percentage of staff of color at Great River School? What's the percentage of people of color in administrative roles? What's the percentage of staff of color that are salaried? And then what is the percentage of people of color on the GRS board? And so I've actually typed in the answers here, but we'll answer just specifically. We have 127 current employees. 19 of those folks are people of color. And specifically, I know that the breakdown within that 15% number varies year to year. And so some families are very interested in, are there folks on staff who reflect your ethnicity or your race? And so you can ask that question if you're a family. But just to keep things moving along here, the percentage of POC folks in administrative roles. And so here I've been very specific. Administrative roles, I've answered here in terms of folks who are managing others or managing teams in those kind of positions of institutional authority. And we don't have a person who is non-white identifying in one of those roles. We have seven of those roles, including mine across the school. And that challenge for our organization reflects both a wider challenge in the state of Minnesota and generally in leadership and education across this country. But that is not an excuse. It is simply an explanation of connecting our challenges currently to challenges we see other places. We need to make, I think, some serious steps to make an exceptional hire in Minnesota to find people who are wanting to work at charter schools, are people of color, and align with our mission and vision. And the reason I say that needs to be exceptional is because if we don't make an exceptional effort to invest in recruiting and invest in appealing to folks of color who are in that line of work, it's not likely that we're going to just have somebody apply. And so we got to take that time and effort and energy and do that. We have to do that better. In terms of non-teaching roles who work in the administration of the policies of the school, there are 3 folks that come to mind that identify as non-white who work in, in the office or HR realm. But I don't think that's what this question was after. I think it was talking about structural power. What is the percentage of staff of color that are salaried at Great River School? 16 of the 19 employees are salaried. And then the percentage of people of color on the board. Currently, we have 10 board members. We have 1 open seat. One of those 10 board members is non-white identifying. And specifically, I want to identify that that 1 open board seat, it would be a tremendous, I think, a tremendous gift to the school to find anyone to fill that seat, but it would be particularly important, I think, for us to fill that seat with somebody who has experience as a BIPOC person in the society or as a caregiver. And so either a community member or a parent who identifies as non-white would be important to fill that one open seat. And if we have more open seats soon, I'm actually bringing this Thursday to the Parent Advisory Committee. If you're out there watching or watching afterwards, hello, Parent Advisory Committee members, thank you for volunteering. I'm going to be recruiting in that group to see if any of those folks are interested in being on the school board, and connecting that group to the school board structurally. Ideally, what we would have at the school, I think, would be at least as many Black, Indigenous, and people of color voices and perspectives in decision-making roles as is a percentage of our community, right? So roughly at least, I would say, a third. And with our school mission, though, I know that there are a lot of talented folks who are non-white identifying who I think would serve our school very well if, say, we had a goal of at least half of our leadership and decision-making positions at our school board and committee level and administration being non-white. So I wanted to give a little picture of, in the state of Minnesota, some demographics, just to give a picture of what it looks like in the state. And so this is actually looking over the last decade or so. This is a report from the Star Tribune, where this kind of demographic data is usually at a 1 to 2 year lag released by schools. So this is the most recent data that in the 10 years from 2007 to 2018, teachers of color increased by just 0.2%, where students of color as an overall percentage increased by about 10%. And so what we are looking at in the state of Minnesota, at least I believe last year, of all of the newly licensed educators, for instance, just 9% of those newly licensed folks were non-white identifying. And so what we have is already a teacher pool that is less than, I think, 3% non-white identifying statewide. And so you can go onto this Star Tribune report, though, and you can enter your school district, and it compares your school district to the Twin Cities as a whole and the statewide average. And what you can see is that the statewide average in 2017-18 was 4% teachers of color. And our Great River School percentage right now is 16%. The Twin Cities on average is 17%. So with a bar to meet averages that I think is too low to serve our students and community well, I only show this to identify that. It shows also, I guess, in this report, one thing I don't want to pass over is that in 2017-18, about 27% of our students identified as non-white. And I think that ratio is not typical of charter schools in the cities. Typically, charter schools are a white identifying student would be in the minority in terms of racial demographics. And so, as we look at how word gets out about our school, we know that families all over the state trust families they know to speak well about or speak highly of a school, and that's what gets families really to enroll in charter schools. So. If you are a family and you know folks who you think would benefit from this school experience, in particular, we would like to recruit a higher percentage of non-white students because our Twin Cities demographically in 25 years is going to be more like a not white dominated society. And I think there'll be a lot of positives for that for young people, but in particular, the folks at our school, I know, we have to do a better job at welcoming a community for people of color at our school, whether that's explaining Montessori education, whether that's showing student success, but also in a way, I suppose I want to identify where students, and this brings me to our last questions that we received 2 weeks ago, we wanted to make sure we spent time on. I have heard from many students, especially in their end of the junior and senior year at Great River School, that they don't want to have been a project of the school as an individual. So if they are a Black or Indigenous student, a student of color, or frankly, even if they are a GLBTQ plus identifying student, if they are a student who had a learning plan for special education. So in any group that could be considered marginalized, students often reflect to me that they don't want to have heard the school bragging, for lack of a better word, about how great they're being served at our school. And so that may be a place where I, as a school leader, could have done better or could do a better job right now in terms of letting the community know what we're trying to do internally to serve students well, to serve communities of color well, to serve traditionally underrepresented voices well. But my reticence to sing that from the mountaintop here at the center of power, as if I'm marketing the school, I think sometimes it's gotten in the way with clear communication. And so I appreciate these questions coming in. If you have them, you're welcome to send them either anonymously or not anonymously. But in the ways that Great River School is working to center and support the experience of BIPOC staff and faculty, I have started the process of asking BIPOC staff and faculty if and how they might be comfortable sharing that answer out with the community. So rather than speak for them, I will identify that as a school, whether we were a majority white school or not, retaining and cultivating educators of color is a project that is a statewide priority. But as a school that happens to be a majority white staff school, it's quite important that we create spaces where staff of color are able to talk with each other openly and in a place where perhaps white identity is not taking up a lot of space. And so there are ways in which we have invested as a school in professional development experiences for staff of color. And some of that momentum, I think, especially in this year of pandemic, is somewhat transitioned over, I think, primarily to listening sessions with Equity Alliance Minnesota. So the goal of those listening sessions is to establish in an open format that is not an open format where people are talking to school administration or colleagues, but how can we improve the employment experience here? What are things we can do to both give tools and show financial and institutional commitment to improving that work experience? And how do you want to see that change? So asking those questions of staff, that's one of the things we're doing. And in terms of ways Great River is working to strengthen the experience of BIPOC students, families, and staff in general, in particular, I see the need for some learning, maybe from this parent advisory committee and maybe from folks out in the community who want to let us know what to do better. But I hear from students that diversifying the student body is something they'd like to see. And I understand that. And I know that there are many challenges to many charter schools who want to diversify the racial demographics or the ethnic demographics at their school. And also to recognize that those are two different demographics. But in terms of strengthening the experience of BIPOC students in their day-to-day life, again, the listening sessions of the Equity Alliance, I think, are a stepping stone to much more concrete ways that students articulate we can improve their experience. But the Student Wellness and Equity Coordinator role, for instance, is one position that, when established a couple of years ago, was established because of the focus on the experience of students of color at Great River School. And what could we do to uplift and center their experience? Because through improving the experience of students who are underrepresented or not traditionally served well by the educational institution, every student benefits. That's the data we see, is that when we help students who are perhaps encountering the most covert challenges that aren't being addressed, if we address those overtly, there are many fewer challenges and, in fact, a much better supported student body for other students too. So there we go. I think those are the answers that we put together. However, I suppose the summary as we close up the hour here would be, I see that schools have to improve, and we are no exception to that. We have to create a more peaceful society for our students at our school, and I think that includes really deconstructing and finding a solution to this problem of where and how do we have to change the educational environment and the employment environment so that we can bring in the wonderful, dynamic, talented BIPOC staff that I know is out there. So there we go. Holly, anything else that I might have misstated or?
Thank you for covering that. I don't think so. I think you covered the questions.
Great. And I don't see any cues in the Q&A.
There's no cues.
So no A's to bring up.
My pitching career is over.
My pitching career is over. The last thing I suppose I will say, folks, uh, is that we have a fair number of new things happening these next couple weeks. So one of them is in-person learning for lower L students. The other is a real emphasis on this screening form that I'm showing right now that we linked on our school website. And then in the realm of non-pandemic operations, March is Giving Month through the Great River School Foundation. So a real focus on raising funds and community support for the Great River School Foundation. So they are hosting very focused events called Connecting for a Cause. And those signups were emailed out to everyone. And an email was recently sent, I believe, also yesterday, focused on that. And that's for folks, if you know you want to give to the school, and you'd also like to hear about where it's going to go and how that's focused, that's what Connecting for a Cause is. It's inviting people who know they want to give to learn a little bit more and get their questions answered and also share a conversation. Also, throughout this month of March in giving, I want to make it clear that this is a really hard time in society, and there might be, I know there are families in our community who giving financial resources to the school is not part of the plan, and it's not part of the relationship that we need to have with you to make this community learning event. So you don't have to give to be part of the community. And if you are in the community and you happen to have the resources to give, now is the time to do it during this March Giving Month. We're also gaining some momentum toward our Blue Heron Bash, which will happen virtually in April also. There will still be ice on the water where I live, and so I have committed to cutting a hole in the water and jumping in at least once.
Oh,
I know,
man.
with some incentives for everyone to watch. I will be fully clothed and jumping into very cold water.
Like last year.
Like last year. It'll be a little colder because we're doing it a little earlier, a month earlier. And so with all these new things happening, I wanted to make sure to say those things. And
Maybe I should get my head shaved.
hey, Holly, that we could do that.
We could do that.
I think so. You could do that. We could make that part of the, I cut a hole in the ice and I jump in, and you, for a certain amount, shave a certain part of your head.
Right. Well,
Right.
that is kind of stylish now.
Yes. Well, you got to plan. We'll start with the sides. If we raise 50% of the goal, 50% of the head.
No mohawk. No mohawk.
Oh no, I forgot what they call it, but we could just do a side shave. Yeah. I suppose I don't want to close this week though, Holly, without saying the people who are on site getting ready right now, I am just so grateful to the teamwork and the willingness to make compromises for each other, to find ways to work together, to be on site together, and to process making that a prepared learning environment for our students next week. I just want to applaud and thank and applaud.
And
yes,
we especially want to say tune in next week based on what you have just said about BIPOC. We want people to come next week, especially.
Yes. So there's a community message sent out inviting folks to come at this very time, 6 to 7:15 p.m. next week. Holly and I will not be here. And in fact, the community forum, you will be here, but not in this way, not as a host. No. Yeah. Our executive committee will be allowing the 2 finalists for interim head of school to make a 10-minute presentation and then answer questions from the community. So bring your questions. If you really want to suggest them early, you can send them to us at office@. We'll pass them along to the executive committee. But the 2 finalists, I believe their names were released today, will be Marcus Walker and David Nunez. And when they make their presentations to the whole community, they will be recorded, and then the community will be able, everyone who saw it will be able to participate in a feedback form where you're able to give feedback on both candidates and their presentations, strengths and challenges and places you have questions. The executive committee will use that feedback then in terms of making a final decision on next year's school leader and how that works. I also want to say, in a time of great change and transition, I will make sure that I am available through the spring, through the summer, through all of next year for whomever is hired and comes in, and that this is a complex and wonderful place worth loving. And also, I want to thank Wendy Fisher, who has been here with me this year, making a lot of really difficult decisions, giving a lot of time, energy, and necessary structure to the school that we have, and bringing a lot of joy to our work together since July in a year that has been tremendously challenging. And so my thanks also to Wendy there.
And Sam,
Yeah.
we all want to thank you for your service.
Oh, thanks,
getting us
Holly.
to this point.
Right.
And
It's been an elongated departure.
we're sad that it's been any departure.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Elongated or not. It's
Yeah.
been good to have you around this year.
Thanks, Holly. Thanks.
And thanks for all the things you've done.
Thanks. Thank you.
We're gonna miss you.
Okay, let's save that. All right, folks, thank you for tuning in. For those of you who are watching, and again, remember, tune in next week, 6 to 7:15 p.m. for 2 folks who are interviewing for that interim head of school role, and they are finalists. So, okay, bye.
Bye. Thanks for coming.